Peace and love, peace and love. Are you ready to deep dive Saturnalia, Christmas, and evolution of New Year's? If you are, make sure you stay tuned with us on Bee TV Numeralytics. We're about to deep dive with the Queen, Porcha Cooper. Peace, family, peace, family, peace, family. Welcome to Numbers Matter podcast, where we pay universal numeric interpretive tribute, that's a unit, to historical and current people, places, and things that affect our lives across all 11 areas of activity. I want to welcome you tonight. I want to thank you so much for tuning in live. If you're here live, if you're rebroadcasting with us, welcome to BTV and welcome to Numerologists. Let me know which channel you're watching this on. Are you watching this on BTV? If you're watching us on BTV, give me a 1 in the chat. If you're watching us on Numerologists, give me a 2 in the chat. I want to welcome everyone that's here. I want to welcome all the new subscribers. I want to thank you for subscribing to our channel. And thank you for being here and sharing this live with us tonight. So, without further ado, I am going to bring on my guest host today, someone that is fabulous and beautiful and wonderful, very smart, the Astro Numerologist and mindset coach, Porcha Cooper. Welcome to BTV and Numeralytics, Portia.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It really is a pleasure to be here. My first time here.
Yes, thank you. Peace so much, Queen. Peace to you, Queens up to you. That's what we say around here on
All right.
BTV and Numeralytics. So, Queens up to you. And thank you so much for being here. And I just want to really thank you for coming on and thank you for being like a supportive person in my life. And I really appreciate you and I appreciate everything that you bring to the table as the currency queen. Getting deep down in Bitcoin. Guys, if you want to get your Bitcoin game on, get with Portia. We're gonna
Yeah.
be putting up her banners a little bit later in the show. So you want to get to her website and make sure you're checking her out. And she's also an astronumerologist. And listen, the queen is sharp, yo. Queen is sharp. So, but we're gonna get into it tonight. Tonight we're talking about Saturnalia, we're talking about Christmas, and we're talking about the evolution of New Year's Day. So I am so happy to welcome you, Portia. What do you have to say about all this? Because I know this was something that you were interested in doing, and tell us kind of why you felt like that topic was important to you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you again for having me. And I just want to reciprocate the same sentiment back to you that, I think you're an awesome, wonderful person. I just amaze me, the ideas that you come up with and some of the sayings and just how your ideas are always just unique and just personal to you. So I'm grateful to know you and grateful to be on this broadcast with you today. So I wanted to come and do your show because one, I do like our synergy, right? Being able to go back and forth and talk, us being number two. So we have a lot to talk about. And two, we put so much emphasis on Christmas, right? This one day of the year when people break their backs, their bank accounts and everything else just to buy gifts for people who won't even remember what you bought them a couple of months down the line, right? By the time Valentine's Day rolls around, everybody would have forgot about Christmas. So, especially the kids, right? Everybody thinks that they have to go get something for the kids. And it's really the values that you instill in your children, right? At this point, where you're putting more emphasis on the material side of life versus the love, right? And being generous and being caring and giving and all that good stuff. That really what we should be doing for Christmas is not so much wrapped up in what can I get versus what can I do for others. And that's why I want to get us back to that type of mindset and mentality when it comes to Christmas.
Well, I think that's excellent. I agree with you 100%. And then, there's a statistics out that when we shop on Christmas, they say we were to take away that holiday as a community, we could like break the whole system if we were to just pull our money out of that one holiday. And it's also noted that that holiday breaks us all the way to the following year. It takes us a whole year to catch up back to the money that we spent on that one holiday. So I think that's profound. And I think that really speaks to a lot of the holidays that we embrace here or that we're, you know, encountered to celebrate here in this country that we live in and really worldwide. And we'll see that through the broadcast that it starts out in one place, but then it spreads worldwide when the dominion of men take over and they try to play God and they start playing with time and start changing time and different things like that. So I'm so excited to get into it, Queen. So without further ado, I mean, let's get started. Let's talk about it. But first, let's acknowledge who's in the chat. We have Shawan West in the chat, Detective
Hey,
West.
lady, how you doing,
Yep.
Shawan?
Peace to Shawan. You
Yes,
guys make sure you
grateful that
guys
you.
check. Yeah, make sure you guys check out Numbers and You on Monday, the 23rd. Shawan will be
Mhm.
on live with Lloyd. And I'm not sure what she's going to be doing. She's been very tight lipped about it, but I'm very excited for it because she's another phenomenal astronumerologist. So, get with her and make sure you're checking her out as well. So, peace to the queen. And thank you so much for being here. And of course, I'm sure she's ready. She says she's ready for this bill. So am I. And Shawan, you know that you got an open invitation on Bee TV and Numeralytics. So when you're ready, Queen, let me know and we'll get that settled up too. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sure she's gonna surprise us with something good on Monday. So I can't wait to
Oh
see what's
yeah.
gonna happen with that.
Yeah. I can't wait. I can't wait. And we're going to be right in the audience cheering her on. Yes,
For
we will.
sure, all the
For
time,
sure.
all the time.
All the time. That's what family does. So, Portia, go ahead, get started. Talk to us about Saturnalia. Tell us what that is, and tell us, what you found out about that holiday and how that kind of connects to Christmas.
Well, I actually have a presentation, so I'm gonna go ahead
Cool.
and pull up my slides. I don't.
Sure.
I got to get it all laid out, and it's for the people to see it on paper. Because for one thing, a lot of people practice this custom, this tradition, and some of them are not even Christian, right? I find that be fascinating that you have people who are not even Christian that still go through the religious customs of Christmas, by whether it's decorating a tree, having a tree in their home, buying presents, whatnot, and it's just become such a cultural phenomenon, like you said, where it no longer has boundaries, identity, or any identity anymore, right? It used to
Right.
be only Christian, but now it's ubiquitous, I should say. So
It's ubiquitous, yeah, and it really demeans the meaning of it, the meaning that they set forth for it to have, the
well,
meaning
no,
that it's
no. Well,
intentional to
this
have.
is how I feel. We've been brainwashed by corporations, and because it becomes so commercialized that everyone's been brainwashed to think that they have to buy gifts and whatnot at this time of the year, or spend to their detriment, right? And that's where the brainwash and the commercialization of Christmas, which is our modern Christmas. This is where we are in 2024, unfortunately. When it
Right.
first came about, people weren't. It wasn't a commercialized thing. It was all about what you can do for your fellow man, and then also making trinkets, gifts, and stuff. Right? They were handmade, handcraft things. They weren't things that people spend a whole lot of money on. So let's get into it. I appreciate it. Let's get into the true history of Christmas. This is what I call the presentation. So just give me a moment here to set up my slides, and we'll go ahead and get going.
Sure, take your time, Queen. And
All right.
yeah, I really respect that perspective, and that's true. It really just has turned into a commercial thing. And like you said, it's celebrated just so culturally. It lets you see how much certain energies can kind of take over the world and take over like the whole globe and every continent, where
Right.
people are conforming to these dates and conforming to these religious, acts or practices or holidays on these dates.
Right, these ideals that are not even a native to them. So it's really crazy how this happened. But again, it's the propaganda that everybody. Let me go on the full screen mode here so you guys can see it on that side, and I'm about to present now.
Oops.
All
I
right.
want to say peace to Leslie Brown. She said peace, Queens. So peace to you. Thank you so much for tuning in
Thank you.
live.
Here. Yes.
Make sure you like the video, get our algorithm up. I gotta get used to saying that myself. Even though I've been doing this for a while, but I never normally say that. So, it's time to start saying that, I think.
Okay, you guys can see my screen now.
Okay, yep, let me add it to the stage.
Oh, good, good.
Beautiful. I love it.
All right, so we're going to talk about the true history of Christmas, where Christmas stems from. We're going to talk about paganism and all that good stuff. So, and the birth of Jesus. Why is it to celebrate December 25th, and what's the significance of that? So, let's first get into the pagan festival origins of Christmas, because I don't know if you guys have heard this saying, but there's nothing new under the sun. Right? So none of
Right.
this stuff is new. We're just doing it in a new way, right? We're just putting our own spin on something that's old, and that's what we do throughout history. The same things tend to get repeated. Not really the same things, but the same themes, right? The same themes get repeated throughout history, and the way we deal with it is, however, or whatever we have in our resources in the time era that we're in. So, of course, here in 2024, we have way more resources than they had back in what 4 AD or whatever that time frame was when they started doing these pagan festivals. So, the pagan festival, Saturnalia, I'm going to talk about this one first because it's a Roman festival, and it's actually in honor of the god Saturn. Now, Saturn was the god of agriculture, wealth, time, and this festival actually took place between December 17th and the 23rd, and it was one of the most popular and extravagant festivals you would ever see. I mean, people were drunken in the street, half naked. Back then nudity wasn't a thing, so you would see people half naked. Unfortunately, you would see sex acts that weren't common, bestiality, homosexuality, things like that, right? People were just letting loose and cutting loose during Saturnalia, and this began as a 1 day festival on December 17th, but then it expanded to several days, like I said, between the 17th and the 23rd. And so it was really a celebration to mark the ending of the planting season, which is a time of agricultural abundance and renewal. So people were just getting their harvest, right? They were reaping what they were sowing at this time. And Saturnalia was such a big thing that even the slaves were freed, for that time period to enjoy life in this moment. That's how big it was. So again, this festival, it was actually marked by joy, right? A lot of joy. As I said, slaves were free during this time period, so you can imagine how happy they were, and even to the point where even some of their masters were serving them, right? That's how fun Saturnalia was. Like they actually got a chance to be on the other end of the stick, which was not heard of, right? Any other time of the year. So they had public banquets, games. There was a lot of revelry. This is very common. And then the homes were decorated with greenery and candles as well. Similar to what we do now with the garland on the garland, and then the light bulbs and that we have now, right? We use electricity, not so much candles, but same reference.
Same
Now,
concept, right? Yep.
yeah, same reference. So people exchange small gifts, and again, these gifts were handmade gifts, small trinkets, not much, but just something that came from the heart. And the gifts can sometimes be candles or figurines or other little tokens of goodwill that they may give. Maybe a few shillings, right? If somebody was generous enough to give money. So it was whatever you wanted to do. So the spiritual significance of Saturnalia, it actually, like, how can I say, it actually represented like a golden age, right? It's like a mythical period of peace and prosperity for people. And if this happened under Saturn's rule, so this god Saturn, this is how they appeased him. They knew that he was the god of agriculture. So during this time, they would, have a abundance, a feast of abundance, right? Everything was to an excess. Everything was just done in extravagance in honor of this god. And of course, you can't ignore the fact that it also was in line with the winter solstice, right? Because the winter solstice typically happens between December 21st to the 22nd. So it also marked a time of rebirth for the sun as well, right? Because the days are now starting to get longer and versus shorter, in which the period we were going into. So we were going into a period of darkness before the winter solstice, and now after the winter solstice, we're going into a period of light. Like the light, it's a rebirth of light. So
Now let
when
me ask you,
Mhm.
is that why you think they picked that day too for the birth of Jesus, because it that designated that we're gonna go like headed toward more light? I think I
Well, Right, right. And I'm going to
Mhm.
talk about that in the
Good.
presentation, but you're actually
Okay.
right. So we're going to
Go
go
ahead,
into a deeper
Queen.
dive
Go
on
ahead
that.
and
Yeah.
cook, Queen. Yep. Yep.
So she's right about that. So when Christianity began to spread throughout the Roman Empire, many pagan festivals adapted and absorbed into the Christianity, traditions. So let me say this: how many people are going to sign up for something where they're not going to have any fun, right? They're going to cut out all the partying, right? You're not going to be able to drink wine. You're not going to be able to do this and that. How many people you think are going to run to be Christians? Not many, right? I don't think that many people are
Right.
going to raise their hands to do that. So they
Right.
had to adopt or absorb some of these practices in order to entice people to come over to their side. So
Right. They needed a
Saturnalia,
buy-in.
right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
Saturnalia, with its timing and its themes, had a significant influence on Christmas, right? Because the transformation in the Saturnalia into Christmas can be seen as a broader picture, right? Broader historical process that they did when you're talking about the Christianization of the world, right? We're not even talking about one country, we're talking about the world. Because this is when Christianity started taking over, and where the existing pagan rituals and traditions were pretty much reinterpreted, right? They pretty much rebranded it so they can make it their own, and so they can help facilitate the spreading of Christianity throughout the world. So basically, we're going to talk more about that, but just to give you a little taste of how Saturnalia kind of morphed into what we do now for Christmas.
Great. So
So,
before Queen, before you
mhm,
continue, Queen, let me chime in.
mhm,
So
mhm.
you guys see me over here cheesing like this. Like I'm loving this. The Queen is really cooking right now. I want you guys to really put a like on this video. Share this video with somebody. Just share it with anybody. Share it on your timeline. Share the video. Get the word out there. The Queen is cooking tonight, and I really am loving this because this is right up the alley of a two. I love this presentation, Queen. It's beautiful,
Thank
and you're
you.
doing such a great job. And I'm really enjoying this. So go ahead, continue on.
Thank you. And you're right. Please
Mhm.
share this with others because we really need to get the word out about the origins of this holiday, and not so much to stop practicing it, because remember, you can always give 365 days of the year, right? It doesn't have to be one day at the year. If you look, all the charities and whatnot get everything that they need all in December because everybody's feeling more benevolent. But what I'm saying is we need to have that feeling, right? Not just 1 month out of the year. We need to continue that 12 months out of the year, right? We should always give to the homeless or the less, or the people in need, or people who have less, regardless of the season. And so that's why I'm saying that this has been so impactful on our psyche, that I want to be able to address this so we can kind of break those patterns and get into more of a habit of giving 365 days of the year, and not just
Absolutely, Queen.
ourselves just for one day to buy some gifts for people who are going to break it. Like, because the kids, I mean, I understand you want something under the tree for your kids, but what if you taught them, hey, look, let's gather all your old clothes, your old toys, and let's go donate it and give it to the less fortunate first.
Yes.
So, yeah, and I can't wait to see how people respond to this, because some people don't even know about these pagan holidays, like this Die Natalis Solis Evicti. When I was doing my
Hmm.
research, I was very, very surprised that there was even another type of holiday. But again, pagan, and people use pagan as a bad word, but that's not a bad word. As anybody who's not Christian, pretty much is pagan,
Right.
and
It's
and
like
and
old world, mystic,
yeah, people
it,
who so
it has
who
different connotations. Yeah.
right, who worship more than one god, or who worship nature and things like that. Things that we're starting to get back to. But I digress. So let's talk about the Die Natalis Sovili Invecti, which means the birthday of the unconquered sun. So this was another Roman festival. So if you notice, there's kind of a theme here. The Romans kind of had a big influence on our modern day world. They are the ones who set the precipice as far as our structure, right? Time, because I know my queen is going to talk about the time thing, but the Romans were the ones who had the biggest influence on our time. And so
Hmm.
therefore they have the greater influence on how our religion is structured as well. So everything fall, even the way our Senate, our government is set up, all Roman influence. But anyway, so this festival is celebrated the sun god Sol Invictus, and basically it was closely tied to the winter solstice, and was officially established as part of the Roman state religion during the reign of Emperor Aurelian, and that was the year of 274 CE. So the term Sol Invictus, it actually means unconquered sun. So all this is just a solar deity that they worshipped through this Roman religion, and it had a cult, right? So this emperor created a cult. It's called the cult of Sol Invictus, and they were the ones who basically set up the structure for this religion regarding this festival. And so, since it was officially established by the emperor, he had military campaigns. He had military campaigns that he had in the east, and so he conquered that part, and then he established this type of religion. So he dedicated a temple as well to Soli Victus in Rome, instituted a festival as a way to unify the diversity between the East and the West, East and Western Rome. So basically, under his empire, they were celebrating or basically worshiping the sun, right? The symbolic power of the sun. So he did this in order to unify religion across the two worlds, right? The Western and Western Eastern Empire. So in order to make it universal, he chose the sun, right? The sun is ubiquitous; it's everywhere. No matter where you are on the earth, you can see the sun from your vantage point. So
Yep.
he did that to transcend any geographical boundaries, which was smart, right? So it appeals to all the
Mhm.
citizens.
Mhm.
Now, again, another reason why they worship the sun, because the sun had the ability and the power to give warmth and light, right, to the earth and to people, and the stability and the strength, right? That's what the sun represented. You could count on the sun coming up every day, right? You could rest assured that the next day you were going to see the sun. And so when we started, or when the year started going into what they call the dark period, when the days started to get shorter instead of longer, they saw it as the sun being conquered, right? It seemed
Mhm.
like the sun was being conquered by darkness, or the light was being conquered by darkness.
Mhm.
So this Sol Invictus was the unconquered sun, because by the 25th, the sun rises up again, and the days start becoming longer. And so
Mhm.
that shows you that the sun could never be conquered by the darkness. And so that was the symbol, or the religious symbolism that they used when they practiced under the Sol Invictus god, or the solar deity. So the winter solstice in their mind was basically a rebirth, right? So this is where we get the rebirth from, right? Or the birth, if you think about it. So the sun is coming up at this time. It's like it's being born again. So that is the significance of Jesus, right? Jesus being born on the 25th because of the sun reference. So it signifies a time of hope, renewal, and a cyclical nature of time, right? And that in itself lets you know why we celebrate the 25th for Jesus, because this particular festival was actually held on December 25th. All right. So this was before Jesus was even in the picture. So
Mhm.
they chose this date specifically for this festival. And because the winter solstice, again, happened between the 21st and the 22nd in the northern hemisphere, so the 25th was a day where they could celebrate this and the rebirth of the sun, because then you could actually, so let's look at this from a scientific standpoint. Anytime we have a solstice, right, the sun is going to be below the equator for a couple of days, and then it's going to start to rise up again. The point that it starts to rise up again won't happen probably until the 24th or 25th. And so that's why these days were chosen, right? Because at that point you can actually see the sun rise above that line, and then now we can say it's actually coming from under the dark world into the light.
Mhm.
So a lot of times during this festivity, they would include games and public rituals that honored the sun god, offerings and sacrifices that had to be made in the temple of the soul. And of course, this is in Rome. So they did sacrifice in honor of this god. It's nothing unusual that we hear about a lot in these. If you think about it, we do that every time through the Catholic religion, when we do the eat Jesus flesh, right? The bread is his flesh, the wine is his blood. So that's
Yeah,
symbolic.
communion.
Yeah, that's symbolic
Mhm.
of that, right?
Yeah.
So not a good thing. Cannibalism, that's the word I was looking for, right? So it's
Yeah.
symbolic of the cannibalism, eating someone else's flesh. So a
Mhm.
lot of people don't even think about the symbolism, but that's what we're doing. And so this is what they did during those times. So they did sacrifice and offerings, nothing short of what we say that we're doing in representative of the bread and wine in church. Now, the
I
timing
see.
of the Die Nautilus Sol Victi overlapped the Roman festival of Saturnalia as well. Because remember, Saturnalia
Mhm.
was between December 17th to the 23rd. So these people had a PDD freak off for like 2 weeks, right? They were doing it. It was big. I don't know if they
They were
had baby
doing it.
oil
They
back
had
then.
minus the lube.
Right, right. I don't know if they had baby oil back then. I don't know what they was
Right.
working with, but trust me, it was a P Diddy freak off, right, for at least
Mm,
a good week and a half, because they had these two festivals overlapping, and so again, the festivals had a lot of feasting, gift giving, and then social merriment, and a lot of social I guess abnormalities. I would say, like I said, the slaves would be freed, the masters would feed the slaves or do whatever they wanted to do, and it was just a time of merriment. So you can just imagine, though, right back in those days, anything goes, and so we think things get wild now. I can only imagine what they were doing back then.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Family, the queen is cooking. Make sure you guys check her out. Porcha Cooper. She's an astronumerologist. She is a mindset coach. She is the currency queen. Make sure you go check her out at bloomlife.me. And check out her services there. And make sure you hit the queen up on Cash App. And you see it's the $Venus Black and paypal.me/Portia. So I just wanted to give the queen that shout out. Make sure you support her on all her platforms. Thank you. Yep. Go ahead, Queen.
Thank you again. So,
Hmm.
I hope everybody's getting something from this and learning a little something, right? Because we all thought the true meaning of Christmas was Christ, right? we,
Yep. So Shawan West, let's see what Shawan said. She said exactly. I've always thought that and never felt comfortable with it. And I think she's talking about communion, right, Shawan? I
right,
think she's talking about communion. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It's always been, with me, it's always been something. It's always been one thing or another when you come up in certain, factions and all that kind of stuff with the church. You know, it's like yeah, I get the heart of it, but you guys, it's like they lost the heart of it. The heart of it is gone and it's all turned into something different now. So and that's the whole idea of it. And then we also just have to look at the historical context, like the queen just laid out. It has a very direct line to some of these holidays that weren't like the top of like a righteous celebration. So it's kind of been morphed into something that's not righteous into something righteous, and but you're combining the two. So that's not really a good thing.
Well, it was used to manipulate people, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day, it was used for mass manipulation, and we already know how the Catholic Church and Christianity came to dominate, which was through a lot of bloodshed, right? So either you convert or you die. So a lot of people just happened to convert because they wanted to live. So, you know,
Right.
that's
Yep.
unfortunate, but that's where they were. And but at the same time, they did try to assimilate some of the old school ways or practices, so people wouldn't feel, um, I guess, like life wasn't worth living anymore. What wouldn't choose the death option, I guess, right? They'd actually get some members
Hmm.
in. So let's talk about why December 25th. And I know Queen brought this up earlier, so we're going to bring this up again. And I did mention this just a second ago. The reason why they chose December 25th in particular was because they were already celebrating the Nautilus Solis Victi, right? Which is the unconquered sun, the celebration of that god soul. So with that being said, and the winter solstice, right? Let's not forget that. See, what we have been removed from throughout history is nature, right? Throughout history, they have just strategically separated us from nature. Um, Indigenous tribes used to follow the stars, the moon, the sun, right? They used to track that stuff, actually keep history. That's why the Dogon tribe knew of Sirius B, but way before scientists knew anything about that, and they didn't even have a telescope, right? And they're still trying to figure out how this indigenous tribe in Africa knew about this planet when they can't even see it with the naked eye. But that's what I'm telling you. We were so in tune with our universe at that point, where they broke us away from that through the means of Christianity, right, and modernization, and let's call it what it is: Caucasian domination. Unfortunately, right, because most indigenous people are people of color,
I
and they
like
are.
that way that you labeled that. That's a different way. I never heard it talked about that and said that way. Caucasian domination.
And that's what it was, right? It's Caucasian domination, and it has happened to pretty much every island in this on this world on this planet. So it's unfortunate, but it's true. Now there are some untapped areas, but even if you go there are people of color. You don't see people who don't have color. I'm just saying.
Hmm.
So And
Hmm.
we're nice people, right? We invite them into our homes and everything, only for them to stab us in our back. But that's for another day. That story's for another day.
Absolutely.
That's for Thanksgiving. Well, let's go ahead and talk about why December 25th again. So, in the fourth century, the December 25th was the date that our Roman emperor, right, Constantine, everybody's heard of Constantine, he was the one that pretty much gave Christians the okay. Before that, Christians were pretty much, outliers, right? They pushed them, they shunned them to the edge of the city. They didn't want anything to do with Christians. But for some reason, Constantine, he went to battle and he saw the Chiro. Now, the Chiro is a Christian symbol, and the Chiro kind of looks like a P with an X on it. Okay, so he claimed that he saw that vision of the Chiro, and when he saw that, when he came back home, he started, he became or started adopting Christian practices and became more Christian-like and started allowing them to have more power and control in Rome. And so, without him, we wouldn't be where we are, as far as the influence that Christianity has had on the world at large. So he was the one that in the fourth century he decided, look, we need to settle a date for Jesus' birth. Right. We already know that, uh, you know, logistically, he can't be born this day, but we got to keep the symbolism, right? We got to keep the. So, this is what I want to tell you guys, and this is what I figured out. Now, I'm an NLP practitioner, and NLP helps you reprogram your mind. There's certain techniques you can use. And one of the techniques that you can use is called the tie in. And how the tie in works is that you take something that you do every day and tie it into something new that you want to accomplish. Like, for instance, you brush your teeth every day, right? So you could say, every day I brush my teeth, I'm improving in math, right? I'm getting better in math, whatever that is, because you're programming your subconscious mind with something that you already do every day and you know how to do, and with something that you're trying to accomplish, and it's programming your mind. So that's basically what they did. They took something that people were already doing, which is worshiping the sun, and tied it in with the person named Jesus, right? And so
Mm.
that's how it got programmed in our psyche that Jesus was born this day. And also, if you look at Easter, it follows the sun too, correct? So
Yes, it
NLP,
does.
so NLP, right, didn't come around or wasn't discovered until the 70s. But apparently, these people knew how to program minds way before then. So go figure. So there is no exact date for Jesus. The Bible doesn't specify an
Right.
exact date. A lot of people already know it wasn't in winter, right? Because they're talking about like lambs and stuff like that. What lamb gonna be
Yes.
outside in the winter? Come on now, y'all.
And yeah, they're talking about the lamb. The shepherds are outside tending the lambs, and they only talked about that. They only did that during the warm season. They didn't do that. So the three dates that they say that correlate with Jesus' birth is sometime in September, like around September 11th, which is around the Feast of the Tabernacle, and then of course the famous December 25th that they claim that is his birthday now, and then between March 25th and April 1st when the original New Year started, the original equinox, spring equinox time. So that's the other time frame that those are the three dates that are kind of roaming around of those are the possible three dates that could be the date that Jesus was born on, but nobody really knows because the Bible does not denote to it.
No, and they won't, because also we
Right.
know that if it was cold outside, who's gonna be sleeping in the manger? Come on now, it's too cold. Let's keep it 100.
It's cold, right?
Right.
Well,
So
we ain't, and that was us because we know, you know, that's us, and we ain't sleeping outside in the cold.
that's what I'm saying. So that date was
Right.
obviously chosen, one, because the sun god was worship on that day, and two, because of the winter solstice, right? And so the
Hmm.
symbolic theme of the light. Remember, I told you light being reborn after coming out of the darkness. So that
Hmm.
renewal, right, is both prevalent in pagan holidays, well, pagan tradition, as well as now Christmas or the
Mm.
Christian tradition. So there's
Mm.
no there your symbolism right there, and the reason why they kept it the same so they could have that tie-in. The tie-in is all about programming subconscious mind. Religion is it has been such ingrained in our psyche, right? That people have a hard time separating themselves from their religion, right? And if you tell
Yes.
somebody that you are a god, like, I'm not God, God is God. Like, no, you're God, and they can't believe it, because who am I? Just a lonely wretch, right? That's what religion teaches you, that you're not anything, you're not worth anything, right? So it's just unfortunate, but that's the program that they go to in order to keep you dumbed down. So
Hmm.
the
And
day for
Shawan
Christmas,
said everyone that believes in something, people just go with it. And that's true. And that's why they call it sheeple, because you're just a sheep, just following, the masses and just following what's told to you to do. And that's so very true. Go ahead, Queen.
yeah, it was the greatest story ever told, right? The story of
Hmm.
Jesus was the greatest story ever told, and we mean story by lie, right? Because
Hmm.
everybody fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, and it's been perpetuated and passed down from generation to generation, right? This lie just didn't start yesterday.
Right.
So, and they knew that we were very religious people, so they wanted to give us something to cling to, but that's another story. But anyway, why December 25th? Because Christmas drew on the symbolism of Sol Invictus, like I said, and that date was the 25th anyway, so we might as well keep it the same so people could celebrate on that same day. So that's what I thought I switched slides here to here. So let's talk about the number 25 itself. So, we
Yeah.
got to break
Get
down
into
the
the astro
numerology.
numerics. Yep. There we go,
We got,
baby.
we got to break it down. We got to break
That's
it
what they
down.
waiting for. Let's hear it.
Yeah, because obviously they had something was up with this date and why they chose this date particular for Jesus. Again, we already know because of the holiday that they celebrated already on the 25th in the winter solstice. But the number 25 has its own power, right? For one thing, it has intuition and intellect. So it combines the natural ability of analytical thinking, rooted with the seven, with intuitive insight from the two. Right. So there's your 25. And then also it has a lot of adaptability with purpose. So the influence of the number five, right, makes it flexible. But it also has a sense of adventure with the number five as well. But the seven gives that adventure a purpose, right? So that 25 equals to that seven. So even though you may be adventurous, your adventures always have a purpose, right? They're not aimless. They're also tied to some type of spiritual or personal growth. So that's
Always.
that's what keeps you in check as far as being that number five and that seven.
Mm.
Now, also, it has harmony and growth, well, spiritual growth. So, the two is going to play a key role in personal and spiritual development of someone who's influenced by the number 25. Because we are deeply tied to intuition, into the spirit world, right? Being a number two. And so it's going to help keep you, I guess, grounded in that sense, is what I want to say, right? Connected to the spiritual side of things. Now, it's also going to challenge you in areas. It's going to lead you to deeper insights and greater wisdom as well, because two is very intuitive. But coupled with that five, it gives you a little more freedom in your expression as well, right? With your intuition. Seven brings it down as far as the spirituality. So all three of those numbers have a, how can I say, a contribute to the number 25, right? They all make up that energy of that number. It's not just one sided. And also, it has balance between the material and spiritual. Just like I said, the five is drawn to worldly experiences, where the two is going to keep it more like spiritually inclined and in tune. And so there's where the balance comes in with the seven, because the seven is a very spiritual number. It's rooted in spirituality. The seven is going to call for spiritual alignment. So the five, even though it's there, the five helps you with the adventure, but the adventures are going to be more for growth than anything else. It's not just to go have fun, lay on the beach kind of scenario. If you do get into something, it's probably like a spiritual retreat, or going to, some type of yoga retreat or something like that, something that's going to increase your spirituality or make you better, personal mindset development or something like that, with the number 25.
Mm. That's an excellent
Now,
breakdown, Queen. That's an excellent breakdown. Go ahead.
well,
Keep going.
I'm not finished, because we got to
I
talk about
bet.
the individual numbers. We got to talk
Here
about
we
the
go.
individual
Let's
numbers.
hear it.
So, again, the 25 is made up of two and a five, but two plus five equals seven. So we're going to talk about the two first, because remember, two is partnerships, it's harmony, it's cooperation. Twos happen to be very agreeable people, right? We don't like rocking the boat, so to speak. Now, we do have our opinions, but only when they're necessary, right? We tend to be more of those kind of people. We'll go with the flow until something interrupts our flow, then we're gonna have to let you know. But until then, we're pretty receptive. We're pretty cool. Now, this part of us is because we're very diplomatic, because we want to be in relationships, right? The whole two aspects is partnership. So whether that's a romance or business or what have you, we like being in some type of partnership. So we learn to be very adaptable and agreeable. But with that two energy, we also we're a water number, right? We're the first water number, the two and the seven. So with that, we have that intuition. We're tied in with the spiritual side of world. See, the one is material and two is spiritual. So when you're on the two, you're more spiritually inclined and spiritually in tune. And when you're working, it's not so much chasing the bag. You have to tune yourself spiritually in order to be receptive, because two is like a receptacle, right? You have to be very receptive. That's your intuition to receive things instead of you chasing. Because when you chase, you push it out. Now, the five here, it actually represents the freedom. Five is the number of freedom, sex, change, travel, right? Five is one of those, hey, sociable kind of people. They like adventure. They love curiosity. They love to explore. They have a lot of dynamic energy. So that five energy rooted with the two, it can come out to be an interesting combination, right? Because if you're that kind of adventurous person coupled with that too, like I said, your adventures are going to be more on the spiritual side, right? You may go do ayahuasca or some bufu or something like that, right? Because that's coupled in with the two. It just makes sense to do those things when you're 25. Now, together, the two and the five create and blend in intuitive harmony. Of course, the two has the harmony of being intuitive, and then the five is the adventure, right? Being adaptable. So, this indicates someone or something that thrives on balance while remaining open to change and new experiences. So that's the reason why, another reason why this date was chosen, because of the agreeable numbers of the two and five equaling up to a seven being a spiritual number. Because if you, the Jesus figure had to be somebody who was rooted into spirituality, but be open enough to the new concepts that were being given to him, right? And being able to step out on his own and embrace the change that was happening before others could see it. So let's talk about the number seven, because we just talked about the two and the five, right? So the seven, two plus five equals seven. In case some people are wondering why am I talking about seven, and if you don't know numerology, so seven is the compound number, and seven, I'm sorry, 25 is the compound number, and seven is the root number. Because two plus five equals seven. Now, I'm not saying those two numbers are the only numbers that make up seven, because you have three and four, you have six and one, right? But when you look
And
at
they
those,
all carry their different frequencies to equal that seven. They all come with
exactly, and
different
that's what I
energies.
wanted to point out. And this is the reason why
Hmm.
we're breaking down the two and the five to tell you equal seven and what that seven represents now, because of the dominant vibration of the 25. Right. So the spiritual meaning of the seven is deeply spiritual. Anybody who's a seven, you're going to be the type of person who likes to be alone, right? Because you're always trying to get in tune with self, right? In tune with your intuition, in tune with your higher self. A lot of people who are sevens are deeply religious, right? There's nothing wrong with that, because you feel like that what fuels your spirituality, and that's fine. But most people do have some type of religious practice or ritual, and also very introspective. They have a lot of wisdom, right? People who are sevens are have a lot of wisdom, and they're always on pursuits for higher truth. Now, with the number seven as well, you can be very analytical, but also gives you some intuition along with that, and that analytical mind as well. But you're going to have to learn how to balance the two, because we live in such an analytical world that you're probably more dominant on that side than the intuition. You have to learn how to develop that. Now, spiritual awakenings happening with number sevens as well, and the quest for knowledge, right? You always have the deep thirst for knowledge that can never be quenched, right? And it's more on the spiritual context and more universal knowledge than anything else. People or situations influenced by the number seven often delve into mysteries of life, right? You always want to know the secret side of life, the metaphysics. You want to
Always digging
explore
beneath that surface to find out.
exactly, but what's behind the
Hmm.
veil kind of scenario.
Yes.
You want to seek a deeper understanding of life and your purpose in life. Now, the connection to the 25, though, because remember, seven is its own number, but its connection to the 25, because those are the two numbers that make up this particular seven, is that it adds a spiritual and introspective layer, and also adventure and harmony as well, right? Because we're looking at the combination of the two and the five that comprise the seven. So it suggests that changes in partnerships are signified by the 25, and are guided by a deeper sense of purpose and spiritual growth, right? So
Mhm.
anybody born on the 25th, they will have or imbibe these kind of qualities as well. So Jesus wasn't the only person per se, right? Anybody who's born on the 25th will imbibe these kind of qualities. So just given the fact, if we're breaking down the numbers, we can already see why this date in particular was chosen for this, I guess, fictitious birth, right? Because Jesus was Yeshua. Yeshua was an actual person, but that's not the one that they're represent in the Bible. So this fictitious Jesus that they're coming up with, right? We can see why, because they wanted him to imbibe those kind of qualities, and that makes sense to have his birth on the 25th if you're looking at it from a numerology standpoint. What you wanted to add, Queen? I know you want to speak on this piece too.
No, Queen, you're doing such a great job. Everything that you said, I agree with 100%. And, people born on the 25th, they're just naturally prophetic. They're naturally intuitive. They lean toward the occult naturally. So they lean toward the spiritual side, just like everything you just said. I mean, that's just,
They
you're
tend to be
spot
harder on
on.
themselves too. They tend to be
Yeah,
very
they're very
self-critical.
critical of themselves. That's that number
Mm-hmm.
7.
Mm-hmm.
Self-critical, worrying about things that haven't happened yet. Can be very successful in business, but would have to really apply themselves to do so. And that
Right,
way,
because they're not
because
one to be
they're
in
introspect.
partnerships.
Yeah, yeah, right. So I just think that you're doing such a great job. I love the breakdown. This frequency, it preaches morals, but it practice that over freedom. So that's the whole thing with that 7, with that 2 and that 5. It's practice over freedom. It's morals of that 7, and they practice it over freedom, with that 5 being involved with it. And then the diplomacy and the peacemaking of that 2, just comes together to make that such a spiritual number. And that's why they picked the number. That's why they picked that day. And I mean, that coupled with it falling in line with the holidays that they were already celebrating. I mean, why not? I mean, this is why they do the things that they do, because they have this knowledge. They have knowledge of these things, and they use this to their advantage, to kind of control society. And that's why we see it has such a global and cultural impact across the world, where everyone really celebrates that holiday, and denotes it as that. So go ahead, Queen.
Right.
I
There's
just
not. Yeah,
wanted
you're
to add
right.
that. Yeah.
But you're 100% right. There's nothing new under the sun, and even with numerology, right? Because this is the ancient Egyptian science that was
Hmm.
propagated secretly throughout, these secret clubs and groups and whatnot, societies and organizations. But it wasn't for the masses. So these people knew how to manipulate the masses through this information. So when anybody encounters a number 25, whether it's a date or your age or just being a symbolic number, it often points to moments of insight and alignment with this deeper purpose in life, right? So that's what the
Mm.
25 is. So if you happen to be going into a 25/7 personal year, you know you know what you'll be up against or if you're turning 25 or whatever that is for you, right? However 25 shows up, even if you're on a 25/7 life path, what your purpose in life is basically this, right? Knowing that you're in alignment with the deeper purpose.
Yeah, now let me give you some advice if you are going through a 7 personal year. Make sure you reflect and you perfect. You observe but don't absorb. Reflect, perfect, observe, don't absorb. And really just take the time with yourself, and you'll do just fine. You'll do just fine.
That's right.
Um it's a critical cycle, but we can handle it. We have all the tools that we need to handle it. And that's why we do this, so we can make sure people know about that too. And if you guys want to know more about that, make sure you hit us up, either myself or Portia. You can hit her up at bloomlife.me. You can hit me up, text me on the moon line. You can ask any question you want, 302-492-7722. And we're here to answer your questions. You can just send us an email, visit the website. You can visit my site at numerologics.biz. You can subscribe to the site, to the mailing list, and you want to get some gear, you can go to besmartclothing.com. But I just want to thank Portia. Portia, do you have anything more with your presentation, or is it my turn?
No, I have more.
Good, keep going.
So
I
let's
love
talk
it.
about the cultural legacy of Christmas, or these not Christmas, but of the pagan religions that basically made up Christmas. So again, what is paganism? Now, if you look at the root word paganism, the etymology, actually it's a Latin term that means paganus, and that originally meant villager. Okay, so or a country dweller or rustic.
Hmm.
So that's really the root word of pagan is as a villager or someone who's on the fringes of society, right? A country dweller. Basically, it's a redneck, right? If you want to, label people like that, but that's what they're talking about, the common
Hmm.
person. So, in context of religion, early Christians used paganists to describe people who adhere to traditional polytheistic religions, particularly in rural areas, right, who were slower to adopt Christianity. So, we have demonized that word so much. And that's the reason why I wanted to give people the definition of it, because people, oh, that's pagan, that's pagan. That has nothing to do with the devil, nor is it demonic, right? It has nothing to do with that. What they're talking about are people who were slow to adopt Christianity, but then it gets labeled as paganism and now has been demonic. So we need to reframe our brains right around the word pagan, because all it means is that someone who wasn't Christian or basically practicing Christianity.
Right, someone
Right.
that wasn't, signing on to what was being forced on people during those times, because it was forced on people. If we're going to keep it real.
Exactly. So anybody who was worshiping multiple gods, polytheism, right? That's worshiping many gods. A lot of religions did that back in the day. They worship goats, cows, whatever, right?
Funny
Elephants.
part is the Romans did that before they decided to do this. So they
Exactly,
had many
exactly.
gods. So.
Because you have to understand when it comes to conquering the world or other countries, you have to unify the people under something that's going to be standard across the board. And so religion was their way to dominate that, right? They now every country that they go and conquer, we can implement this standard for everybody to follow us, right? And now they have to bow down to us and follow our rules through our religion. And so this is the
Mm.
reason why this was implemented the way that it was. So anything other than Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, right? Because those are monotheistic, they all believe in one God, was basically paganism, right?
Mm.
So a lot of this, like you said, was happening in ancient Rome, Greece, and those areas. So it was the norm. Or any non-Abrahamic religion also is considered paganism as well. So anything outside the Abrahamic traditions, right, that doesn't follow that code, or any religion that's nature-based, right, the things that we're getting back to, right, in
Mhm.
terms of focusing on Mother Earth and Earth-based rituals and things like that, or being tied to the land and following the cycle of the moon, the stars, and the Earth, and all that stuff. They put us
Mhm.
away from that, and they call that paganism or Wicca, right? Because that's what the new form of it is now. New form of paganism is that Wicca and all that stuff they're coming up with now. So
Mhm.
anytime you honor the cycle of nature and stuff like that, or deities that are associated with natural forces, then that's considered to be paganism as well. Or even ancestral traditions, because you know how we call on our ancestors to help us. Yoruba traditions calling our ancestors to help us. Papa Legua, Oshun. When you're calling on things like that, that's considered to be paganism as well.
Yeah,
So
wow,
basically,
Queen. You're going in. I want to give a shout out to Kanaya. She's in the
Kanada,
audience.
there she
Peace,
go.
Queen. Yeah, Queen's up, Kanaya. Welcome to BTV and Numeralytics. Queen, make sure you like the video, share the video, subscribe. And Queen, make sure you hit me up so we can get you on BTV and Numeralytics as well. This is another phenomenal astronumerologist. So hats off to her and all the work that she's doing. And I just want to really thank everybody that's tuning in live to this. Make sure you go check Portia out. Let me put her banner up here. Porcha Cooper, she is an astronumerologist and a mindset coach. You can check her out at bloomlife.me. You can give her a circulation donation at Cash App at $ Venus Black or paypal.me/Portia. I want to thank her so much. She is doing such a wonderful job of breaking all of this down. I have learned so much. I'm so grateful for you being here, Queen. So I just wanted to make sure we did a quick check-in for all the people who are
Yes.
just coming on and joining us in the audience. And we're so grateful for you guys being here live. And we're also grateful to you guys that are joining us on a rebroadcast. Peace and love. Make sure you like the video, thumbs up, share it with somebody, and subscribe to our channel. Subscribe
Yeah, I
to
really do appreciate
BTV
it
or
too.
Numeralytics. There you go.
Yeah,
Probably both. Go ahead,
yeah,
Queen.
you guys could be anywhere on a Friday night. You chose to spend it with us, so thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about paganism again, because remember, early Christians, they were surrounded by paganism, right? They were a new form group. Wasn't nobody all into the Jesus piece and all that whole Christianity thing. They were like on the fringes of society. again, up until the point when I told you Constantine saw this vision of the Chiro right before he went into battle, and he actually won that battle of conquering, I think, Eastern Rome. And when he conquered Eastern Rome, he needed a religion to unify, right, both halves. And he went with Christianity. He started being nicer to the Christians, giving them more power, and then they slowly became the state religion. So the church sought to make Christianity relatable and appealing to a diverse population. So with that, he adopted and reinterpreted existing cultural and religious symbols and practices and festivals. So they didn't completely eradicate everything. All they did was just transform it into Christian celebrations with new meaning, right? So again, the sun god worship was replaced with Jesus, or this fictitious Jesus, but they still kept certain things like the decorations, like the evergreen decoration, the feasting, the gift giving, right, which was common during those winter pagan festivals. Now they just reinterpreted with the Christian framework, right? This is how they do it, and they associated with hope, charity, and joy of the birth of Christ. That's how they
Mm.
reframed it. So in Christian theology, Jesus is not a literal solar deity, right? They're not saying that Jesus is the sun, but what they're doing on the slick is saying he's the son of God, SON, when he's really SUN, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the light thing is what they associated. Because remember, he's supposed to be the light. Jesus is the way and the light. Well, so was the sun. And so the light associated with Jesus, though, is spiritual and not physical. And that's what they mean. They mean the light within. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why his role as a savior, right? He's bringing us out of darkness, right? He's a savior bringing us enlightenment. That's the reference to the sun. And he's supposed to be saving us through this enlightenment. He's our salvation to humanity. That's the story that was spun to us, and that's what we understand it to be. So it really was a strategic and pragmatic move by the church to facilitate a transition from paganism to Christianity. So what they did was they co-opted popular festivals, right? And Christianity itself made itself more accessibility to people, because now it's like, oh, you're Christian, well, you can come mingle, Christian mingle, right? We
Mm-hmm.
still party over here. And so it made it more enticing for people to want to join in with the Christianity versus, staying on the fringes. But again, we all know that there was a lot of bloodshed with this whole transition too. So some people still didn't go willingly. So it still made itself adaptable so it can make the transition less disruptive to the cultural practices that people, had been doing, or the customs they had been doing for years. Now, by incorporating and reinterpreting these pagan customs, Christianity eased this transition. People were actually programmed, again, using that mind program of the tie-in, because now we can tie this in with this, and we can program your mind to think it's something new. Now, many modern Christian Christmas traditions, such as decorating the trees, exchanging gifts, celebrating on December 25th, all have roots in pre-Christian festivals. And then I didn't speak about Yule, but Yule's another festival. That one was actually celebrated in Eastern Europe. I think the Nordic people celebrated Yule. So that was
Mm-hmm.
another type of festival. But that one is closely associated with the origin of Santa Claus. And I'm going to talk about that one too. So we talked about reframing pagan practices, right? How they kind of did the bait and switch on people,
Mm-hmm.
and then strategic integration. How they strategically incorporated these practices so people could seemingly feel that Christianity was similar to what they were already practicing, right? So it doesn't feel like it's something different. We're still holding on to the same customs that we were practicing before. So now Christians today think it's just purely cultural and symbolic, but we're still doing the same things that they were doing back then. It's just in a new fashion. But of course, Christianity always incorporates these elements of pagan festivals, and that's what you have to look at. Now,
Mm-hmm.
again, the symbolism between Jesus and the sun, right, and how all that ties in, and how they wrote the story of this alleged man that's not even true. Even though they're saying that it's not sun worship, it's actually the light within. I can see that, but at the end of the day, we know where it stemmed from. Now, Santa Claus himself, let's talk about him, because he's part of Christmas. He's part of our modern Christmas,
Right.
and people think that that's a pagan thing. Now, somewhat. In Northern Europe, they had pagan holidays. Like I said, the Yule. Yule was one of them, and they did celebrations where people were benevolent, giving gifts. They also bought gifts for people or punishments, right? Kind of like if you were good, you got something. If you were naughty, then you got a spanking. So
Right.
they
Or
actually dealt out.
you got the stocking with the coal.
Right, or either you was put in the stocks for a day, with the little cuffs
Yeah.
and your head in the piece of wood. So right, that's what happened on that, and so that's how Santa Claus kind of came about. Because remember, whether you're naughty or nice, and so that
Yes.
tradition kind of fell. That had the influence. Now, one of the types of figures that they had back then that kind of represented Santa was called Odin. Odin is a Norse mythological god associated with wild hunting during the Yule, and the Yule is like a midwinter festival that they would have. Now, Odin is actually depicted as an old man with a beard, and he's flying a horse. Right? The horse
Mm.
name is Seplinar. Believe it or not, it had a name, and he would deliver gifts and for those to those who left offerings for him. Kind of like when you leave the milk and cookies out for Santa.
Yes.
Yeah, right. It's the same thing they were doing for Odin. So it's the same
Wow.
tradition. Now, there are the Father Christmas in pre Christian England, they had Father Christmas. Now, Father Christmas was a folkloric figure who represented the spirit and goodwill and the revelry during the winter season. So this was associated with feasting and merriment, and rather than gift giving, they didn't give gifts, but they just basically had one big old party, right? That's basically what they did in England, but it's similar fashion. Because remember, what do we do on Christmas Day? Have a big old feast, right?
Right.
And
A big
everybody's all
party,
happy and
major
jolly.
liquor, people do that.
Exactly,
People do
exactly.
it.
So that part of it was incorporated from that history. Now, also over time, they had Saint Nicholas, which was a persona that merged in with local traditions. In Germany and in the Netherlands, they had Saint Nicholas or Santa Claus. Santa Claus. So kind of similar to how we pronounce Santa Claus. And so when they came to America, because we're getting close to how things came about here in America, so when the Dutch settled here in America, they kept their traditional holiday of Santa Claus, right? That figure. Well, it became anglicized name to Santa Claus. So Santa Claus actually came from Santa Claus, which was a Dutch name. And of course, this also marked the time where this figure delivered gifts to children. And it had an element of both the pagan and the new Christian tradition, kind of marrying the two. Again, with the Dutch settling in America in the 1700s, they changed the name to Santa Claus. And so we had early American tradition of Santa Claus, and how Santa Claus got branded here in America was actually through "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," right? That poem that came out in the 1800s, because up until then, nobody exactly described how Christmas was supposed to go. But this guy wrote this poem. I'm trying to think of his name right now. Clement Clark. Clement Clark Moore. He wrote this story, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas." Everybody's heard the story. And that was the first time anybody ever talked about Christmas and Santa Claus, and how Santa was jolly man with the white beard and whatnot. So he introduced the modern elements of Christmas for us through that story. There was no modern Christmas up until that story. See how everything kind of ties in, especially with Santa coming down a chimney
The
with
chimney.
reindeers. Yeah, but that wasn't even heard of before the story. Like there was no Santa and reindeers and all that, right? All that jazz
Wow.
before the
That's
story.
fascinating.
Yeah. So after the story, then that's what happened. Everybody started depicting Santa with some reindeers coming down a chimney, right? And all that stuff. Now, what also helped with that and solidified that you had an artist in the 19th century, Thomas Nast. He had a painting where he solidified how Santa looked, right? Plump with the beard, white beard, right? And then guess who drove it home either further for the commercialization? Coca-Cola, right? Let's go ahead and talk about
Yes.
them, because in the 1930s they had a big marketing campaign that featured a lot of Santa that we recognize today, and even the red that's on the Coca-Cola can is called Christmas red, right? That's how
Wow.
successful that campaign was. That the color, the red that they have, has been trademarked. Nobody else can trademark a Christmas red. It's by Coca-Cola, and they were the ones that
Wow.
shaped our psyche as far as how Santa looks and how we portray Santa to this day.
Wow, Queen. Queen just dropped a bomb on y'all. Did y'all hear that? She said that Coca-Cola connected to Christmas back in the 30s. have trademarked Christmas red. Like that's why that red in Coca-Cola, that's like the reddest red that you can see. That's like the most Christmasest red that you see. So that's
Exactly. And through their
amazing, Queen.
propaganda, they brought it
Yeah.
commercialized. And let's talk
Hmm.
about the sun and Jesus' birth. I know I'm running over time, but I
No,
want to.
you're good, Queen. Keep on building. We building here. Keep on
Okay.
going.
So
Don't even worry.
we talked about Santa Claus and the modern Christmas. So let's talk about the sun and Jesus' birth, right? And the symbolism of it all. Because remember, it goes back to the light of the world, right? They say that Jesus is the light of the world because his birth is actually tied to the movement of the sun, right? The sun goes beyond the date of Christmas. It's more about the symbolism of the light. And again, it's just a rebirth of the sun after the winter solstice. That's all it is. That's all it is. The Christians saw a direct parallel between the two. And so the birth of Jesus, whom they believed to be the spiritual light coming to the world to bring salvation. That's it. So that's how they tied it to the sun. And again, we talked about how they wrote these things into stories like the Bible. For one of the things they have in there, there's a gospel, John, I think 1:9, which says, the true light that gives light, though the true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. And he was referring to Jesus,
Mhm.
right? But that's really the sun. But it's hey, the Bible's a good story. If you want to read it, it's chock full of life lessons and whatnot. But don't take everything that they put in the Bible as history, right? Don't do
Yes.
that. Don't do
It's
that.
allegorical, and it's parables and all that kind of stuff, and precept upon precept. So when you read the Bible, you really have to read it in a meticulous way. You can't
Right.
just read the Bible straight through. You have to go precept upon precept. And that means sometimes you have to read this part of the Bible, and then you have to go back to this part of the Bible. So this is what, we have to make sure that we're doing to edify historical context, is to really understand some of the things that we're linked to, connected to, and kind of hooked on to nowadays, so we don't become those sheeple. So you do understand the esoteric side of it, the spiritual side, the background, the historical context, all that culminated into one. So now you have the greater understanding, and then you can just make whatever decision you want. Obviously, I mean, it's up to you. You can celebrate it if you want. You can do things that are beneficial to you, but now at least you have the knowledge of it, and that way that gives you the power of it, instead of that thing having the power over you, where we were talking about kind of spending all your money on this holiday, instead of doing something that's just meaningful. That means that you care about somebody. Doesn't always have to be a monetary thing and related to a material measure.
It doesn't have to be relegated to one day as well, right? That
Right.
should be something that's ongoing throughout the year.
Right.
So,
Facts.
and she's so right on that, right? So we just have to keep that in mind because a lot of this, the way the Bible was written, it's written in a lot of allegory, written in a lot
Mhm.
of symbolism, and you just have to kind of weed through that stuff. But again, I find it to be a good handbook for life, right? I'm not saying that you need to follow it verbatim, but it does have some good stories to maybe save you through some trouble as well.
Mhm.
Now, because I don't totally condemn it, but I'm not religious in any sense. Now, the symbolic connection between Jesus and the God Soul or Sol Invictus, the Unconquered Sun, we talked about that, right? How the sun arose up from the darkness. So basically, that was just used by early Christian writers. There's an early Christian writer called Tertullian, I think his name was, and Origen. So they recognize the parallels between, Jesus and having him, symbolic with the sun. And so in Christian terms, they did emphasize that Jesus was the true light. So they knew how to parallel the two. But all they did was just basically write it in a way that Jesus is the true light. He's the savior of the world, right? And all that good stuff. He overcame the spiritual darkness. So that's why I'm saying it's all allegorical when it comes to the Bible, because Jesus is a spiritual light that overcame the darkness, but that's metaphysical because you can alchemize yourself to overcome darkness as well. And that's between your negative thoughts and positive thoughts, right? You can always reframe your mind from negative to positive, and that's what they mean, from going from dark to light, right? Changing
Mhm.
your perspective. So that's all
Yeah.
they really mean. It's all mental if you think about it. So Jesus was supposed to be somebody who overcame spiritual darkness, just as the sun was believed to overcome the longest night of the year. So that's basically what it all ties into. And so, from a theological connection, now, the link between Jesus and the sun is not coincidental. We all know this. The alignment of the dates and also theological reflection of Jesus as a role as a Christian savior. in history, and the sun representing light that's coming out of dark, right? So the Christianities, or to the Christians, it was like he was dispelling darkness and bringing the renewal to the world. So he was renewing the world, basically, is how they depicted Jesus, just as the sun was being renewed at that moment. So we
Mhm.
already know that he was not born on that date, but all it is that they put him on that date so he could be associated with the returning of the light, right? Which made it fitting for a choice to celebrate his birthday during that time because of the winter solstice, right? And the fact that people are already celebrating at that time, and we wouldn't have to disrupt cultural norms that people already had in place or established.
Right.
Now, that was the end of my presentation. To be honest with you guys, I don't know if you have any questions. I don't know if anybody, wants any clarification on anything, but we're definitely, and I know you have your part, and I went over some, so I apologize for that.
Oh no,
Yeah.
you're great, Queen. You did a fabulous job. I loved your presentation. And I'll just, give some feedback from the audience. Kanaya said that that's the greatest story ever told. That's absolutely correct.
Hmm.
And Shawan's talking about she learned that a few days ago. I think she was talking about, I forget, but I think it was the last thing that we were talking about. The wow moment that you said when we were like, wow, wow. But this is great. We're getting great feedback. We have all of our family in the audience supporting us
Thanks,
tonight.
family.
So, everyone has good feedback. If you guys want to add anything else on, please make sure you do so. If you have any questions, make sure you ask. We're about to get into the time piece of this and the evolution of the calendar, and how we kind of got to New Year's Day being celebrated on the first. Because as we know, not all people celebrate New Year's on the first of all. And that was not always celebrated on the first. So that's kind of what I'm going to get into a little bit. But before I do that, I just want to do a little another tease because Detective West is teasing us, and she says, so this is what she'll be touching on and she'll be discussing on Lloyd's show when she's on there on Live with Lloyd at Numbers and You on Monday, 12/23 at 7 p.m. sharp. She will be on Live with Lloyd and she will be discussing the need for us to think for ourselves because we don't know whose plan we may be carrying out and the real intentions behind it. And I think that is such a powerful topic, Queen. I cannot wait to hear you build on this and really touch on this, especially you being a number four person. I be in everybody's business. You're a number four person, so I know that you're going to come with the jewels and the gems and the real life personal experience of this notion. So I'm excited to hear that. So guys, make sure you're tuned in for that on Monday, 12/23. I just want to thank Portia for everything that she's done. Big up to Leslie Brown. That's a Live with Lloyd family member. That's now a Bee TV and Numeralytics family member. Welcome to Bee TV and Numeralytics and the Numbers Matter podcast. I hope you're enjoying the show. I hope
Yes.
got some jewels and you picked up some good things that, Queen broke it down, yo. I'm like, all hell to Queen. Queen's up to Portia, astronumerologist extraordinaire because, bringing that two energy, bringing that preparation and that presentation is just what I love. That's what I do here on BTV. And she's a two. So she's a girl after my own heart. And she knows what to do. So I think, this has such been a great thing. So without further ado, we're a little bit in, but we're family here. So we don't mind, BTV is, we're okay. We're going over. We're okay here.
Hmm.
Long as the audience is hanging in there with us, we're going to hang in there with you. And then, people can pick and choose which parts they want to look at or whatever the case. So we're going to get into it. Let me share my slides. Let me do this. Give me 1 second. And I don't have that many slides, but I did want to show this
Let me
slide,
stop sharing.
Yeah, I okay, yep. Thank you, Queen. Thank you,
Hmm.
Queen. So that today, guys, this is what it's all about. This is Numbers Matter Unit 2. If you don't know that unit, it stands for the Universal Numeric Interpretive Tribute. With you guys in the audience, you adds a Y to that, and that makes it unity. So all these number matters units that we do, we started out as a unit, we ended in unity, and that's with you in the audience. So I want to give a big up and thank you, gratitude to the fullest to everybody that's tuned in live with us, that has chimed in and been a part of the show. You're a part of the show, and we appreciate you. And we love you. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this with a loved one. So yeah, this is our numerical valuation. Queen Portia, astronumerologist extraordinaire, currency queen, mindset coach, has done an amazing, fabulous job. I learned so much. She broke down Saturnalia, Christmas, Christmas, Sol Invictus, how all of those things really tie into Christmas, the commercialization of those things, to the current status that we have here. And it was really just phenomenal. So what I'm going to get into now is the New Year's part. And we're going to do that by exploring the different timelines, if you will. We can call these timelines and timeline shifts, because when people start playing with time like that, it really denotes, that they might think they're God, or they might think that they, want to control the world. And that's where we see the correlation of the powerfulness of this holiday, of how it does transcend globally, and it transcends different religions and different cultural practices and historical practices, sometimes this Christmas holiday and New Year's Day. So we're going to get into it. Let me share the next slide. 1 second. Here we go. All right. So what we're going to be talking about is the evolution of the calendar and how we kind of got to New Year's Day being celebrated on January 1st. So we're just going to get right down to it. And you've heard of Portia allude to a lot of this tonight. So some of it may be a little bit repeated, but not really, because I think it just gives a further insight of what we're talking about, and give you a better understanding of this timeline and how things have changed and how they have kind of tampered with time. And we really don't really know actually what time we're in. We just have to kind of accept where we are and just work with what we got. And that's oftentimes what our community is good at doing anyway, turning, something into nothing in that sense. So, we're game for it. So let's get started. So we're talking about right now, we're going to go through timelines. We're talking about ancient Egyptian time. Okay. We're talking about BCE, before current era, before Christ's era. You can look at it at, they put a lot of different labels on what that means,
Before
but it's
Common Era is another one I saw too.
before
So.
common era. Yep. So
Hmm.
it means all that. It just means before that era of the current era that we're in.
Hmm.
So the first calendar that is, the first calendar was this calendar. It was the ancient Egyptian lunar calendar. So it was a lunar, solar based calendar that was based on the phases of the moon. And this really speaks to the greatness of our ancestors and our people, that they didn't have all this modern technology, they didn't have all these things. They learned this by being in tune with nature, by observing, the cycles of the moon, and they made a 12-month calendar based on the lunar cycle. Each new month started with the new moon, so that's the way that they worked it out. And since the lunar cycle is about 10 or 11 days shorter than the solar cycle, they had to actually intercalate a 13-month. And they called that 13-month Thoth. And I know we know the emeralds of Thoth and all that kind of stuff, and the hermetic principles based around Thoth. Various different stories that relate to that. We're not going to dive too deep into that part of it. I welcome the audience to go do their research on that part of it if you want to know more. We're going to just stick to the basics of the calendar and how it kind of evoluted through the time where we kind of got to this place of celebrating New Year's on the first. So people have that understanding of it, especially since this is the season we're in, right, Queen?
That's right. This is the time
Yep.
of year. But all the time I always kind of figured, why was New Year's in the dead of winter? So this is
Right.
going to be it.
Yep. So we're going to get into it. So again, that 13-month that they added to that lunar calendar in those ancient Egyptian times to kind of like settle things out and kind of make it more in line with the agricultural seasons. They added that 13th month called Thoth, and what they did was they would intercalate that every several years to kind of keep up with the agricultural seasons. So what they did was they did that, and then New Year's then during that time frame was signaled by the annual rising of Sirius, which Queen
Hmm.
alluded to. And that's also known as Solstice, star, Sirius star Solstice. And when that could be observed in the eastern horizon just before dawn in midsummer, that's when they would determine that this was the new year. And that would determine also if they were going to intercalate a month for that year, which they always entered at the end of the year. So that always, so now how we know the current leap year, how we do that in February, what they did then was they intercalated it at the end of the year instead of February. So, that's the breakdown on that. So then what ended up happening is, using that calendar, kind of going through the times, our people looked at this and they realized that, hey, this is really resulting in the misalignment of the agricultural seasons. It wasn't hitting the proper time when the Nile was the fertilist, where that was the time that they pinpoint and looked at as the beginning, right? As that fertile season, and it was kind of off a little bit. So what they ended up doing is, our ancestors, they, they evolved it into something what they call the Egyptian civil calendar. Now, that was several years later than from when they did the ancient Egyptian calendar based on a lunar cycle. It was several years later, but it was still before the Common Era, or what they would call AD or AM, which I won't get into the AM part of it, but just know that AM is also intercalated with AD. But that was another time shift that the Romans actually did within their own timeline. So again, me talking about this chronological, sequence of events, the time was changed so many times, guys. We're just focusing on the overview, but I do welcome you to dig down this rabbit hole because it was changed so many times. It's almost probably uncountable to see how many times they kind of tinkered with the dates and kind of just, oh, we're going to push this back here and we're just going to move this forward here. So, it's really something that fascinating, and it's a lot to dig into. So I welcome anybody to really go down that rabbit hole for yourself. And then let us know in the comments too what you think about this so far, and what you think about these timelines and how they have evolved and coalesced. So far right now, guys, we're still at the point where New Year's Eve is being observed in midsummer. So we're going to call that between like the beginning of March going into anywhere between probably the beginning of June. They don't get too specific about what they're calling midsummer. But that's, around the time that I would call it. So I would say from the end of March 25th upwards of April 1st on into like the season of June. So then, like I said, a little bit later, the Egyptian civil calendar was introduced in. This was a more precise calendar that our ancestors recognized that we needed. And this was the calendar that was actually based on the solar return. So instead of basing it on the lunar calendar, it was on the lunar cycle, was based on the solar cycle. So this, of course, like I said, it came in much later, but this is the first calendar that consisted of the 365-day calendar that we really know of today. So that was our ancestors that actually came up with that 365. They calculated that time. So really, I would say that all of these calendars, it's really based on our work. It's based on the foundation that we laid prior to any of these civilizations even really coming into play and even having a role in anything profound in history. So we came up with the 365-day calendar. We organized it into 12 months, 30 days each. And then what we did from that solar calendar, we did 5 additional days at the end of the year, and they called that like a at the out of the ordinary temporal construct. That's what our ancestors referred to it as. So bright, so intelligent, and this is the same DNA that we carry. So we can always tap into that and make sure that we're continuing to be inventive and coming up with new ideas and really following our own heart. Like Detective Shawan said, we have to follow our own heart, follow our own plans, and make sure that we're really, evolving things, and a couple things too. Nothing's really new under the sun, but the thing is, it's your approach to things. It's your approach to things and how you approach things and how you make things your own. Because sometimes information is information, truth is truth. It can't be changed, but it's the way that you interpret it, it's the way that you deliver it, and the way that you really embrace it to make it who you are, and make it be understood through the message, the way that you can relay it. So yeah, so what ended up happening with the solar calendar, it's the first solar calendar. And it was used with the rising of the Sirius star that marked the new year. So again, we still are stuck with the new year being at midsummer at this point. So it at this point it has not changed to no January 1st. And this is where we're at. And what our ancestors did, they actually maintain both calendars now. So they maintain that lunar calendar that the ancient, ancestors came up with. That was brilliant. It's still a relevant calendar, and it's very much used then at that time in conjunction with like it was used in conjunction with like spiritual or agricultural regions or like religious reasons. And then the civil solar calendar was used for like administrative functions. And that's how our ancestors used both calendars at that time. And they used that in conjunction throughout the pharaonic period. So throughout the period of the pharaohs, this is the period that we're talking about. Like the 2000 BCEs and all that kind of stuff. Up through to now, let's get into the Roman calendar. And this is when we start seeing things change and we start seeing people kind of play with dates and change, the old way of the way that we, really viewed the time. So let me see. Let's do a check in. Peace and love to Teresa Miller, Hotep, and Bright. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much, Teresa, for tuning in with the Queens. Hopefully, if you didn't tune in with the whole thing, just rewind this because Queen Portia really put it down, and she really did a great breakdown of Saturnalia, Sol Invictus, and how that relates to the Christmas season, and breaking down the numerical perspective and astronumerical significance of the number 25, how that relates with the base number 7. She just really did a great job. So thank you so much, everybody who's tuned in. And now we're covering the evolution of the calendar into New Year's Day. And I just want to thank everybody who's here live, and of course, thank the Queen. So now let's get back into it. So now we're getting into um, the Roman Republic calendar. Now, this is when the shift happened when we got to January 1st of being the new year. So in the Roman Republic calendar, the year still did begin in March 1st initially. It began in March 1st, and then around 153 BCE, the Roman Republic officially recognized January 1st as the beginning of the year. And they based January, and they renamed it January after the god Janus, the Roman god Janus, which is the god of beginnings. And so they did that to make that more in alignment with that, and to make it in alignment with the way that the consuls took office in Rome. So now we're relating this to the Roman Republic and how they took office at the beginning of the year. So they relayed New Year's, they changed it from March 1st in 153 BCE. They changed it from March 1st to January 1st, based on that Janus, Roman god of beginnings, and based on the consuls that would take office in Rome at that time. And that's how we kind of got to that calendar. So that calendar isn't even the end all be all of the changes of the time. So what ended up happening is, so we're looking at the time 153 BCE. If we take that down to about 46 BCE, this is when the Julian calendar was conceptualized. This calendar was conceptualized and introduced by Julius Caesar. And this was a part of his reform to the Roman Republic calendar, which was very inaccurate. The Roman Republic calendar was 3 months ahead of the solar calendar and ahead of the agricultural season. So it just wasn't touching on the seasons the way it should be. So this is kind of a part of what they did with this. So the one thing that I do want to point out is when we get to the Romans and the way that they looked at this in a way that they based their information on the changes that they made in the calendar, is that they were all of them were advised by an astronomer. And I want to point that out because you know that's poignant, because they went to the metaphysical people to say, hey, what's going on with this? Like, what should we do with this calendar? We're not hitting the right seasons, and this is causing whatever it's causing for them, right? So Caesar, he was advised by an astronomer. His name was Sosigenes. And he introduced to Caesar the more accurate Egyptian civil solar calendar that I just told us about, based on that solar year of 364 and a fourth days. So this is how that Julian calendar came about. It was really based off of our calendar. It was based off of what our ancestors did with that solar calendar. And then what they did was they did take it and put their spin on it. They added the leap year. So the calendar, it was the basis of the calendar that's used to this day in the West. It's still the basis of that. So from that point on, from 46 BCE up to upwards of 1600 years, the Julian calendar was at play, and this was a calendar that was used. So very fascinating stuff right there. Um, you know, and when the Julian calendar got into play, they also kept the tradition of using January 1st as New Year's when they incepted. Now that I say that to say a lot of people at the time and a lot of places at the time would not adopt this calendar. They were sticking with the historical calendar, the historical Egyptian civil calendar that was kind of ruling everything. They were sticking with that or their old historical calendar, which we'll see based off some of the things that I bring up later, areas of what calendar that they stuck with to make sure that they continue to celebrate New Year's around March 25th up to April 1st. Um,
It's really interesting how how January is named after that god Janus, because that god is actually two-faced. He's facing the future and also the past, and so that's why they chose him as that particular god. And Mardi Gras, they always have crews, and all those crews are related to Roman gods. That's how much Rome has such a world influence as far as religion and what we still practice to today, including their calendar. So I love this information.
Absolutely, Queen. Absolutely. And then so now we're so far. We've already seen the shift to New Year's Day going to January 1st. And then what happened in 1582 AD. Now we're getting into the current era. Like I said, that was upwards of that 1600 years time frame where the Julian calendar was being employed. We get to around 15. That brings us to about 1582 AD, where Pope Gregory, that's the 13th, introduced the Gregorian calendar to correct some of the errors that the Julian calendar had, like some of the inaccuracies. So again, this reform of this calendar at this time frame was based on the work of another mathematician and astronomer named Christopher Clavius. So they realigned the calendar to meet the spring equinox this time, to meet it every March 21st. And then, to be honest, the way what this really is based on, they based this on how it was with the first council of Nicaea, which was back in 325 CE. So that council was the council that really established a Christian doctrine. It's the council that kind of wanted to push this doctrine around the world. It was
Unified
behind the work
everything.
of Constantine the First. Yeah, when you mentioned Constantine, that's why I was smiling because I'm like, that's in my presentation too. So this is behind the work of Constantine the First. We know that's how Christianity was kind of really adopted and really, pushed on the world and really driven to this point. So just to bring that part up, and edify on that.
Well,
So
let me
this
bring
is
this
where
up real quick, though. Let me bring this up in the role that Constantine played as far as an influence, a world influence that still dominates to this day, right? We're talking about holidays, time, and everything else. So, with
Mhm.
that being said, remember he wanted to adopt monotheism. Do you think that was more or less in line for people to worship or to follow his rule, one king that unites, right, all nations, in a sense?
I think it was to follow the rule of the one nation, which is really what they're trying to get at to today. That has never
Right.
really changed.
We're,
That's been their goal. And
exactly.
that's what they did then. And that, like I said, that started with the Council of Nicaea. It's called the First Council of Nicaea back in
Mhm.
325 Common Era. So you guys, I really encourage the audience, whoever's enthralled by this information, go study that because it's such a rabbit hole and there's so much more information that we're not going to obviously touch on about that Council of Nicaea and all the wicked kind of things that went on and what they did, to our ancestors, to our people, and just to people and humanity in general. So it really runs deep, a lot of the stuff that they did and why they did it and, why they made these changes. And see, it really just denotes that, these are changes that they made. Yeah, they based it off of our ancient calendar, but then they made that shift to that January 1st for their God. That also denotes that they're not monotheistic. It shows if you're calling out a God, that shows that you're not being monotheistic right there. So that's in direct contradiction with their Christian religion right there. So it's just so many contradictions that come out of some of the things that we see with the historical context of this stuff. And people just really doing things to benefit themselves and benefit whatever their agenda is. And we really see that today. Nothing's has changed.
Right, world domination, right? In order to dominate the world, you have to bring them under one mindset to control the masses in order for them to be manipulated. So it's amazing that that concept still rings true to this day when you still have people that are so-called elite that are still have these elaborate plans to still control us in such a fashion.
Right. Right. And then just to round out the presentation from me, I'm going to just talk about some of the cultures that have not adopted January 1st as New Year's Day.
Oh, yeah, I was
Um,
about to say that too, because
yeah.
the Mayan calendar, the Aztec calendar, they never got mentioned.
So those were
Not
the
in your
queen.
presentation. I'm just saying, like throughout history, they adopted this calendar, but discounted their calendars.
Discounted their calendars, but some didn't, and some didn't. And what I found from the cultures that did not adopt January 1st as New Year's Day, it's really based on kind of three things and like kind of three areas. It's based on one of them are based on the culture still utilizing the lunar and solar calendars, such as the Chinese New Year. They do that. They celebrate theirs between January 21st and February 20th, depending on when that new moon comes in. And then you have the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, which is celebrated in the fall around September 6th, that in between October 5th, based on the Jewish religious calendar. That's when they celebrate their New Year's. And then you have the second category, which is cultural and other religious traditions. So you have cultures that do this based on like historical reasons, such as the Nowruz, which is the Persian New Year. They celebrate that at the spring equinox around March 1st, which marks the first day of the month of that's called Farvardin, and that's on the Iranian calendar. The Persians, that's when they celebrated around March 1st. And then in India, there's various religions in India that celebrate New Year's Day on various dates. Some to mention are the Vishu in Kerala, and Puthandu in Tamil Nadu. They celebrate that on April 15th is when they recognize their new year. And then the third category is historical calendars, cultures such as the Ethiopian culture that, did never adopted the Gregorian calendar. So they are still living true to the ancient historical ancient Egyptian civil calendar, and they celebrate their new year. I'm gonna try not to butcher this enunciation. um Inku Tatash, and that is celebrated in September. So those are the cultures and the places that didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar. But anywhere that I pretty much did not mention, most other places have worldwide adopted New Year's Day is January 1st, and it's really celebrated worldwide on that day based on Gregory, Pope Gregory, the 13th in that Gregorian calendar. And we know the influx of the influential cultural impacts that the Pope had and the Christian church had on our culture and our community, throughout the Atlantic slave trade, and being astronomical and all of that with the ordering of basically melanated people, being okay for people to enslave them. So that all came out of the papacy's office. I won't dig too deep into that. Again, that's another performance for it's another show for another day. But just to give you an idea, like that this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. And I'm so fortunate and glad and grateful to have the queen astronumerologist here with me, Porcha Cooper. So Portia, what do you think about that?
I think it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I do thank you again. And everything you said was spot on as far as the calendar goes. I mean, it's unfortunate, but we are under the influence, a dominance that has been in place for thousands of years. So, but moving into with Pluto being in Aquarius, now the social norms are now starting to change. Everything's been going to be flipped on its head, and I guarantee you, within the next 20 years or so, because we can already see the shift now as far as people being dominated by religion. It's slowly people are coming away from that, and we're going to see more people adopting spirituality. And it is funny throughout history that a lot of the origin does come from Africa, but they don't ever give that the credit. Like even some of the Roman philosophers, like Pythagoras and Plato and Aristotle, even went to the Egyptian schools, but it doesn't say that that's where they got their knowledge from, right? It always says that they were the ones, the big philosophers that
They
came
call
up with these
themselves the
ideas.
father of medicine,
Right, the founders,
the
yeah,
father of numbers.
Hippocrates being the father
But
of
they don't
medicine.
talk about how they had to go to Egypt to learn that
Yeah,
knowledge,
they'll
to learn
briefly
from the
mention that.
master
They'll
builders and
briefly
teachers.
gloss over that, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes they'll do that, but Yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
amazing to me. So you really do have to do your own research, and everything we tell you here tonight could be totally wrong. So I always encourage everybody to go out and do your own research. Right? What we're trying to do is basically spark your imagination and also get you flowing into that direction to knowing what's actually going on and what the reality is. Because what you see on your daily basis is all an illusion, and you need to go back to the sources of why we do the things that we do now today, right? Because again, we'll go back to that saying that nothing is new under the sun.
Right. And I doubled down on everything the queen just said. You always have to go do your own research, no matter how credible you think the people are that you're listening to. And do the own research. And not only that, guide yourself with your own spirit. Listen to your higher self and listen to your spirit, and who guides you, and who you talk to on a daily basis to make sure that you're in tune with what you think is correct and what works for you, because that's really what it is at the end of the day. I don't like to say this person's wrong, that person's wrong. People have to do at the end of the day what resonates with them and what
Exactly.
helps them build a better life. I mean, as long as you're doing that in conjunction with the greater good for humanity, that's what we're all supposed to be doing for ourselves, and our families, and making sure that we're edifying each other and making each other think. And that's why we have Numbers Matter, because we want to make people critically think. We want to make you look at dig beneath the surface, famous Jizza song, scratch underneath the surface. It's beneath the surface. You have to dig beneath that surface and kind of look for yourself to see what's going on. And then that's the way you take your power back to family. That knowledge is you taking your power back. So
It
make sure
is.
you guys continue to do that. So I'm going to share Portia's site right now. This is the Bloom Life Matter site. Let me take this down. Hold on one
Yeah,
second.
and the funny thing is that they say Jesus is the light, but actually we all are the light, right? And so your light, your enlightenment can actually illuminate someone else coming out of darkness. And so don't ever be afraid to shine.
Right. Don't ever be afraid to shine, like the queen said. So I want to make sure that you guys go hit the queen up on her website, Bloom Life, me, bloomlife.me, .com, and
And I
let
have
me
bloomlife.coach. That's my website, and this is also my landing page. So if they want to sign up or download or buy my books or anything that I have to offer, is right there on Bloom Life. So I do have my products now. My basic crypto class, that one is for the record, especially anybody looking to get into crypto. I highly
mhm,
suggest you take that course. But there's lots of information. I am a money mindset coach, so definitely
mhm.
have financial information. I need to remove how to invest in real estate flyer. We just had that class, was phenomenal class without buying a property. I have a transformation guide, and then I also have a free power of growth mindset. Right, I want people to get the information that's going to help them change their lives. And again, I understand that everybody can't afford, coaching services, products, and whatnot. So I want to make sure that I have something free and available to those who are looking to get started to transform their life.
Absolutely, queen. And I'm sure the family appreciates that of you. And extending that thought, especially for the season, that's the same thing with me. So you guys can
Yes.
definitely just text any type of question you want to that moon line that you see up there. Text me, we can do a quick call. For a short consultation. And then you can just see if it's something that you're interested in doing. And I'm sure the queen has, she extends that too. Send her an email, go visit her
Yes.
website, look at her products, just hit her up. She's very approachable. Hit her up if there's something that you see on there that you're interested in, and she will definitely make sure that she gets with you on that. I want to go real quick to my site, Numerologists. So want to make sure you guys visit me on my site. I'm not sure why it's not coming up. Here it goes. It's just taking a little minute to load. Make sure you guys come visit the site. You can check out everything that I have to offer. Here goes some services. And then here goes our Be Smart clothing. You can, we have everything that you see on the screen is interchangeable with colors, sizes, sweatshirts, t-shirts, hoodies, tote bags, necklaces, notepads. And then we have a little bit about me, Meet the Queen, and then you can join our club. Here goes some testimonials from some of the people that are my clients. And here you can stay connected with us by subscribing to Numeralytics. So when we have different things, you will be on the mailing list. You can come here and hit this link, and it will take you to Be Smart Clothing, where you can purchase anything that you just seen on the Be Smart app. And I'll just come here because that's taking a minute to load. So here goes Be Smart Clothing. I believe I still have the sale here from when I was on live with Lloyd. So there's a
I
numbers
love that.
11 sale going on right now. You guys can go pick up some of this merch. This is positive, sayings and all original, creative, positive sayings, slogans that the Queen curated herself for the family. Queens up, kings up, royalty rules. That's us respecting, uplifting, loving, empowering, supporting each other. Justice on earth with the Black American community will lead the whole world to. Peace, love, and happiness, et cetera, et cetera. Kings up, Numeralytics, BTV. We have everything that you're looking for. So make sure that you hit us up if you guys are interested in any of that. I really, really want to thank everybody that tuned
I
into
just love
this
it.
live. It was phenomenal. I loved it. Portia, you did such a phenomenal job. I learned so
Me
much. You
too.
broke
Right back at
everything
you.
down. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was beautiful. It's great synergy. Of course, a couple of twos on a 20 day, a couple of 20s on a 20 day, on a 2 day. And you're in I'm sure I believe you're in a two, at least a two green star day for you. And I'm in a one green star day. So I knew it would be, phenomenal. And I'm just so blessed to know you and have another two in my arsenal, because I call all my numbers, I call people by their number, and I call those are my arsenal. We're superheroes, especially the twos. We're the real life superheroes of all the numbers,
Right.
because of our agreeable, peacemaking, adaptability, nature, and our willingness to help, and really nature's helpers. That's who we are.
Go with the
Number
flow
two.
like water, honey.
Yes, ma'am. Nature's helpers. We are nature's helpers. So I want to thank you, Queen. Thank you to
Thank
all
you.
the queens that were tuning in live. And I'll let Portia go ahead if you want to go ahead with a closing note to end the show out.
Oh well, I would say this. Let's make 2025 a more positive year. Don't dwell on what other people are doing. Just focus on yourself, and everything will be all right. So with that, I hope everyone peace and blessings, and happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays to you, and peace and love, peace and universal love to the family. Remember that royalty rules, and this time that stands for righteousness, righteous universal love, exhibit solidarity. So as long as we're doing that, we're remaining royalty, rules to ourselves, and we're queens and kings up nation. Peace and universal love.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.